I am observing. The eye of the beholder is for focus, for thought. Paying attention in this present moment is to witness the progression of thought. The observer is observing as a process. The observer is also being observed in a feedback loop of perception. The cohesion of it all is the centripetal force of love. This is so that being and observing it all means that love might not go unnoticed or unknown. Welcome to the show. I am observing with Karen, Christy, and Patrick. That's me. Thanks for listening. This is part 2. For instance, the tiny house movement. Maybe you've heard of this, maybe you haven't. Here's the deal. Housing is the most expensive thing there is for any family, any household. And household could be you, yourself. It could be you and your partner. It could be you and your family, you and your extended family. That is your household. And that's microeconomics. Microeconomics is what do consumers do? And that's what we're called. We're called consumers. Very interesting word. It means we're consuming the goods produced by, corporations. And that was the way. It still kind of is the way for most people. But now we're thinking in terms of provisioning in other ways. And the opportunity to do that is becoming, impeded to a certain extent, particularly in the area of food. But going back to housing, you have people, a lot of people my age lost their house due to not having a job, not being able to pay their mortgage, infrastructure issues. Right now that's flooding in Louisiana, so that's, disaster issues, which we were facing. That was why our infrastructure was falling apart, was because of storms. So this tiny house movement is interesting because most of the time people have bought a house, paid 15 or 30 on a mortgage, end up owning the house. Let's say our grandparents. I don't know if our parents did, but grandparents and parents paid off the house, sold the house to a younger couple, and the cycle repeats. And that was their investment in their retirement for the most part. The real estate market, and I know this because my parents flipped houses, not in a flippant way, but they bought and sold property, and I helped fix it up when I was growing up. And so I was kind of aware of, how the housing thing worked. And that was the number one investment for any family, was housing. But it's not turned out well. So, people's relationships with the banks has changed. The kind of just the debt instrument we call a mortgage has changed. You used to be able to pay it off early. Now you get penalties if you pay it off early. They've arranged the payment schedule to maximize interest. So you're paying on the interest early on more than the principal. And, as a result, people just cannot get those things paid off like they used to. So older people are more strapped for cash than they used to be. Some of their other investments aren't doing as well. And so they're doing a reverse mortgage, and that takes that burden off. So that means that house really is just going to revert back to the bank. And we have this term bankster because the way banks have been, they've been so draconian in terms of not working with people on mortgages, turning this great investment for households into an instrument of investment, and it completely changes the paradigm of what housing is. So this tiny house movement is a DIY thing. It's a maker thing. I can make a small house and learn to live in that, and I can buy it with cash or make it myself, or it can even be a barn raising. People help me, and then I can, plump that down in a tiny house community or a piece of property and live off the grid, and there you go. I mean, why would people even think of doing that? When before we had, nice housing with indoor plumbing, and what's the problem? The problem is that the housing situation is in the Freakonomics zone. It's, the doing the math, when you sit down as a family doing the math, a lot of people don't even want to buy anymore. And as a result, there's a run on or demand for 2-bedroom places, because that's a minimalistic housing for a household or family, which has raised the price of rent. And, it's the kind of decisions we've had to make as a household now versus what I would have done 10, 20 years ago is completely different. So the tiny house thing bypasses the whole mortgage thing. So, we can't have that, right? So now they're making rules about, where you can put a tiny home. If people are living in a RV, they're making laws that it's supposed to be a recreational vehicle for part of the year, not full time. I mean, there's a battle going on between, the normal way we used to do things, which has become unreachable for a lot of people and caused homelessness for a lot more people. And, what is eventually going to be, because people have to live somewhere. They have to be in housing. We're even an animal has a den, you know what I mean? A homelessness, I don't even want to start with that on this show, but it's like, that's the basic of life right there. And then our food, I came from rural communities there in Oregon, and one of the things my parents did before it was even cool was try to figure out what was organic. So they went and we got organic, and we picked organic fruit. We got organic milk. It's like they were looking for the local resources, and that's kind of coming back in popularity again. Localitarianism, eat your local food, buy from your local people. We have this paradigm of the supermarket with food comes in boxes, and we have generations now that wouldn't even know what food looks like when it's coming out of the ground. They wouldn't even know what it looks like. And that's, a serious issue. In our household, we have a garden. We're in New Mexico, so we're trying to learn what grows here coming from Texas in the West Coast. We're trying to figure out what can we grow here, what's local, what localitarian for us, trying to find out, resources for things like honey. I don't buy supermarket honey because I don't know where it's been, and other, things that we need, herbs and things that we need. And, this provisioning thing is, something a household always works at to do better and better and make things nicer. And frequently now that falls apart for a lot of people because of the scarcity of jobs, because of the reduction in pay, reduction in benefits really affected the household. Now I'm going to throw something in here. I've been learning about something called a basic income guarantee. And I've been sort of in the movement. When I saw it, I was very excited. And it has to do with the idea that many thinkers of our past, a conservative gentleman, I actually heard him speak before he passed on, Milton Friedman, who was, we got Reaganomics from him. He believed in supply side economics, macroeconomics, right, the big picture. And Martin Luther King, of all people, in his last book before he was assassinated, he talked about some kind of basic income. And it's been bandied about since the industrial age began, because we went from agriculture, where it required a lot of people to work on farms to grow things, to machines beginning to do that, to where, except for a few items, machines do most of the work of, harvesting. And we have chemicals and all that, so I won't get into that. But, this began to reduce the need for human labor. Then we had the industrial age factory side of it come about, and that rehired a lot of people. We had those couple of wars in there that kept a lot of people busy. We had, the post-war years of a lot of growth and, manufacturing. But manufacturing has always pushed, technology. It's usually the first adopter, right, is manufacturing of these technologies, because they want to, want to have maximum output, minimum downtime. They don't want human error to be involved. They don't want human injuries to be involved. Very common. Lots of My family worked in the timber industry, lots and lots of injuries. They've been reducing that by using more and more robotic type machinery. What used to take a crew of 10 guys now is like 2 or 3 in terms of timber harvesting. And that's all changing, what jobs are available. So this basic income guarantee goes like this. And it's the idea that there would be a baseline, bottom line income just for every citizen, man, woman, and a reducted amount for children. And that would help provision households. That would help people transition, in terms of work. But ultimately, I believe this too. I believe we're going to have a complete change in what human work is. What I understand now, looking into the issue, is that almost 50% of the jobs are vulnerable to being taken over by technology, whether it be mechanical or AI. AI is a big factor. Artificial intelligence can do a lot of the repetitious types of stuff. And some things it doesn't do very well, and some things it does. So there will be jobs, but it will be the ones that, haven't yet had applied AI. So we've got to make a change. And also, a lot of people reject consumerism. They believe that this consumerism base that we had is a very, pollutes and puts a lot of stuff in the landfill. So, reducing, reusing, and recycling is now more preferable. So, another thing people see is the waste of consumerism, particularly planned obsolescence. So I had the 2 tires on my front of my car, split and went flat within a week of each other. I mean, like a clockwork, you know what I mean? And it was really frustrating because I know that the 2 tires, I bought this car, the previous owner had put the 2 tires on there at the same time, which means that just like clockwork, it just broke. And that's planned obsolescence. It's planning for something to break so that you have to go buy new, just so someone can have a job. I mean, we're going to have to make some changes in human provisioning at the micro level and the macro level, but it begins at the micro level. How do households make decisions? And already this concept of, do it yourself and provisioning alternatively from going and having a job and getting pay and then going and buying stuff is already changing drastically. And so that means that the macroeconomics is affected. That's why we're not coming out of this recession like a natural cycle, because right when it starts, the downturn happens. Companies are scrambling to figure out how to replace people, how to do more with less of us because of their costs going up. There you go. What do you do with that, right? They don't want us. They got robots that never get tired. Oh, you can replace it quickly on an assembly line and fix it. This is a whole different paradigm. And I want to talk about the difference between a, abundance economy and a scarcity economy. Ultimately, your dollar bill, your unit of currency, whatever it is measuring scarcity. In other words, the less of it there is, the higher the dollar amounts. That's why things like platinum, gold, diamonds, whatnot, what have you, are considered rare things and have a high value to them because people want them anyway, even though there's few of them. And, so what ends up happening is at the macroeconomic level, they're manufacturing scarcity. And there's a planned obsolescence. They're making sure the tire breaks. They're making sure your toaster breaks and you have to buy a toaster every 3 years. The whole thing with water, the water on the